Okay, so welcome to this unusual recording video lecture seminar that we're making for YouTube. And I'm with Magdelana, who's a former graduate of our diploma program, and her colleague Victoria. And they're going to talk about something that they've developed, which is an extension of the IFS, the Internal Family Systems Model, developed by Richard Swart. Now, you may not know much about IFS. If you want to know much more, then we'll put a link in the notes. But they will do a little bit of an introduction about that. But they've developed something very specific on working with GSRD clients that really makes the model much more helpful for this population and for our populations. So I've invited them on, and we're going to learn together what they have to say. Welcome, both of you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
So tell me about what you've done.
So you want us to introduce ourselves shortly?
Yeah, give us a little bit more background as to who you are and where you are.
Yeah.
And then talk about the model.
Okay. So I will start if that's okay for you, Victoria. My name is Magdelena Ségur-Cabanac. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a Gestalt psychotherapist and IFS therapist based in Vienna, Austria. I work in private practice and I specialize working with GSRD clients. That's why I did the foundation training with Pink Therapy. And I work with single people and relationships and relationship constellations.
Thanks.
Great, thank you.
So I'm Victoria Kirby. I'm based in London and currently working in private practice. I do integrative psychotherapy and IFS therapy. I work with both individuals and couples. And before that, I was managing a little counselling service in a sexual health clinic in London. And I have a advanced accreditation with Pink Therapy.
Great, thank you. So tell us what we need to know. What is this interesting model that you've come up with?
So first of all, we want to say a few words on IFS.
Yeah.
So internal family systems therapy is a therapeutic approach that regards the human psyche as a system made of many parts and a self at its core. And what is so special about this is that this natural multiplicity is not pathologized, and this enables like a paradigm shift in psychotherapy and far beyond. Because when we are born, we are pure self, and we come from that space of peace and love, and this space remains in us. It's our very natural state, and it's indestructible. And through interactions and bonding experiences with caretakers and significant others, we take on information, we learn skills, and they are stored in our parts. And Victoria will tell you more about the parts.
Yeah, so our IFS theory says that we're made up of all these parts, and our parts are different ages. So as adults, we have parts within us which are very, very young. So if you think about sometimes like you might feel flustered in a situation and suddenly feel kind of very young in that moment, or like they're having an argument with somebody, feeling like there's a part of you feeling unseen, and that part might feel really young. Like in that moment you might feel really childlike, and IFS would say that's like a young part has taken over in that moment, or a young part has kind of come to the fore. And what happens at IFS theory says that what happens in our lives when painful things happen to us, when scary things happen to us, particularly when we're young, that parts of us take on those experiences and they take on beliefs about those experiences. So we, like in CBT or psychodynamic therapy, we talk a lot about core beliefs, like a belief of maybe like worthlessness. And IFS holds the view that young parts of us take on these beliefs and hold on to them as what they call burdens. And then what we do, because we don't like feeling these things, is we push them away. We like push these young parts of us out of our conscious awareness. So we exile them. And then we have like protective parts of us, which work very hard to keep these young, scared parts exiled. So, for example, parts that work very hard, or parts that seek to look very attractive to receive validation from people, or parts that maybe get very angry to protect other parts within that person's system that feel vulnerable.
Great. Okay, so that's a good start. So that I might like have a 6-year-old part arguing with a 14-year-old part.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or I might despise the young one for being bullied and stupid and getting into all kinds of trouble, or blaming different parts because I don't know, parents divorced or something like this, and I feel like it's their fault.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So a 6-year-old part taking on a belief like it's my fault, my parents are arguing, there's something wrong with me. And then that 6-year-old part is like sort of pushed away somewhere in our psyche, but it's there and it's impacting like a day-to-day adult life.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Next step.
Yes. Now let's talk about the good news, because the good news is that we have this state of self, and this is with us from birth, and it has all the qualities of good leadership one could need. So there is compassion, there's perspective, curiosity, there's acceptance and confidence. And this self doesn't have to develop through stages or something. It's always really, it's there. And sometimes when systems are very like burdened by trauma, for example, these parts might remove self from danger. And then sometimes it happens that people are very strong, controlling managers, for example, that don't want to have any vulnerable feelings. They exile them. And they also exile, yes, because they want to protect the person. And what we need to do to access self is just really turn inwards and access it. And this is what spiritual traditions promote by practicing meditation, for example. And the state of self-energy is a very natural state. So a lot of people access it without even knowing IFS, obviously, just by walking in the forest or hiking or running or practicing yoga, meditation. Some people access it when they listen to classical music or paint or hug a tree or whatever. It's just really this state where you feel this qualities of calm and clarity, when you feel connected, when you feel when you can access your creativity, when you can feel compassion and confidence and courage, and when you feel curious about something. This quality of wanting to grow and wanting to learn and wanting to become more yourself is a quality of self-energy. And this is very central to the Star of Self model, this quality of self-energy.
Yeah, and just to add it, I think, what's lovely about IFS is it's a method to help people to access that state really relatively quickly. Magdalena talks about meditation, which of course has loads of benefits and can take a long time to get to that place. Or when we talk to clients about having self-compassion, for some people that's so difficult, and actually IFS provides a way of getting to that place really quite quickly.
Yeah,
that sounds exciting. Yeah.
Yes. And it's the I don't know how to say it. It's unblending. Like you help your clients unblend from parts. Like once they understand that their feelings or what they're experiencing are only parts, it's not them, that is angry or devastated, but it's a part feeling that feeling, you can help your clients unblend from these parts just by really taking a breath and observing the parts having that experience. And this is
I
really
like that phrase, unblend.
yes,
It's like blend, it's undoing, it's separating out.
yes, exactly.
Lovely,
It's separating,
lovely.
yes. And there
Mm.
are various techniques on how to help clients unblend. Like you can do it when they have their eyes closed and they see the parts, for example, and you can give more space. But it could also be, you could symbolize the part and just put it somewhere in the room and just get this externalization and distance from these feelings that sometimes flood people. And so it's a very useful way to access more self-energy and unblend by that.
Okay.
And another aspect that seems very important to us is that self-energy is not only in individual human beings, but it's interwoven in communities. It's in groups. And you can measure, so to say, the amount of self-energy by how open-minded and compassionate people are, and by how fair a union of people is, and by how easy it is to be yourself around these people, especially if aspects of your being are different from theirs.
Okay. So we're getting to a bit of a meta level there as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And self-energy is it's not when you're in self-energy, like all the qualities are there all the time. Sometimes it's really just curiosity that is there. Sometimes if you have a part that has very strong negative feelings and you witness this part from a perspective of self-energy, sometimes you can't feel compassion right away, but you feel this curiosity, like, I'd like to know what's going on for that part. I like to know the story of that part. And once you listen and you realize, okay, I can understand that from their perspective, their feelings really make sense. More and more qualities of self can come in. And this part will feel understood and, will feel the attunement and the compassion. And very often these parts really soften back, like they relax. And this is very helpful for clients, especially if there's a lot of polarization and tension in the system.
Okay. So are you ready to tell me about your star of self?
Yes. Are you ready?
Are we at that point?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. All right. I'll share the screen that I've got your diagram, and hopefully people will be able to see that well enough. I'm just going to try and close that behind there. Can you read those labels well enough on this size?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think,
Great.
yeah.
I mean, you know them already, but I'm not sure if they're appearing clear enough. Okay, tell me.
Yeah, so the very first thing to point out is the bottom where it says ground zero. So this is a model of how someone with what we might call non-conforming feelings around their gender or sexual orientation, how that person may go through the process of understanding and figuring out and celebrating their identity. And we developed this model with a knowledge of how difficult it can be for people who have feelings that don't conform to the norm, or have an identity that doesn't conform to the norm. So the first thing that's really important about our model is this idea of ground zero is the world into which people are born. And Magdelana was talking about self-energy, in a collective, like an environment, a community with these qualities of acceptance and compassion. And of course, we know, sadly, that the kind of the political system globally gets in the way of that. So we have a lot of inequalities in the world, and we have systems like capitalism, individualism, patriarchy, like an unequal distribution of wealth, all these things that form this kind of climate of fear. So a lot of the time people are acting out of fear and becoming polarized, which gets in the way of the safety to be non-judgmental, to be celebrating of difference and diversity. And
so is all that toxic stuff, those toxic paradigms, is that the ground zero?
yes,
We're born
yeah,
into these cultures and environments that are hostile, largely hostile to us. Right.
yeah,
Okay.
so that
Yeah.
overarching hostility. And in many, if not all places, like a lot of what we would call normativity. So assumptions that people are cisgender and heterosexual and have monogamous relationships, and that is the assumption unless otherwise stated. And what goes with that is this either very explicit or subtly implied hierarchy of those things being superior, those things being better. And of course, in many places that it's not just that sort of subtle implication of a hierarchy, it's like outright stigma and oppression that people of certain genders and sexual orientations are outwardly discriminated, are physically hurt, are politically oppressed. And so that is also really important in our model, that we're making the point that people are born into this world where they will kind of take on, they'll absorb norms around gender and sexual orientation before they consider having their own gender or sexual orientation.
Okay.
And so that our model of identity development comes from this place of many people are indoctrinated with norms before entering this process.
Right.
Yeah. And bringing in this focus with self-energy really helps to understand that in this hostile environment, realizing that you're not conforming is self-led. It shows the connection to one's truth, and having all the resources there to go through this process is why we wanted to create a model that is not linear or like models we have heard about before, but really acknowledge that this identity formation process is an individual process, but it's happening within the context of living in this society. And we want to consider intersectional identities and see that this process coming out, but not only coming out, but really finding your way, navigating your life, is a very, very individual process.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and if you look at these words, so we've got like self-energy in the middle of this star, and if we look at these words like courage and confidence and compassion, these are the qualities of self, and they're the qualities that people can use as a resource for going through this very individual process. And as Magdalena said, it's not a linear process. So each point on this star is a point, it's a process that many people go through whilst they are figuring out their gender and sexual identity. And not everyone might go through each one of these, or some of them may be much bigger for some people than others, but they're certainly very common points within this process. However, there's no particular order that we see people going through, that actually one cornerstone can trigger another, and multiple cornerstones can be experienced at the same time.
And the cornerstones are in the white labels around the edge?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So
it's a very complicated but beautiful diagram. So I'm just enjoying learning about it. Okay.
Yeah. So the things in white are the key, some of the key processes, some of the key places that people may go in their journey of understanding their sexual and gender identity.
I certainly recognize those as themes that we might be talking about in therapy in terms of accessing community or accepting oneself, healing, processing one's anger and grief,
Yes.
sharing identity, I guess, and
Yeah.
sharing one's life, or inviting others into knowledge about oneself, or what might be called coming out for some. Awareness and questioning is often quite an early stage, I guess. And then self-expression, being fully who you are. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like it. Okay. So
And
dig in a bit. Tell me a little bit more, or maybe you've got a plan, a vignette to illustrate it. Yeah.
yeah, I can talk about a client and maybe then some more of these cornerstones, and also how the theory of parts can help as well.
Right.
So I have a lot of clients, and I'm sure this resonates, who even kind of far down the process of expressing their identity still have parts of them who question it. So for example, one client who I work with in his 20s had relationships with women, and up until sort of mid-20s didn't want to explore relationships with men, but did have a few sexual encounters, came to kind of a realization, so came to this sort of accepting point. So we say that this cornerstone of acceptance is like when the majority of someone's parts are ready to accept non-conforming feelings as real, as valid. And the only reason that they wouldn't, that people have parts of them that don't want to accept them, is because it's really frightening. It's really frightening, as Magdalena said, to go against the norm. It takes courage.
A lot of courage.
It takes confidence. It takes self-compassion to be able to say, have these feelings which don't conform to the norm. And so that stage of acceptance, of self-acceptance, can be really tricky. And for this client, that took him until he was in his 20s, and he came to this view, the parts of him that wanted to express himself felt that was too important to keep these feelings squashed down. And so he decided to leave a very loving relationship with a female partner to explore bisexuality, and even quite a way into this process, having really found like a new community, having told lots of people in his life, still had parts of him, and I see this with so many clients saying, but what if these feelings aren't real? And I think IFS can really help and can be really validating for people who are having that question, because we can say, well, that's a part of them who took on this burden, who absorbed this belief, these feelings aren't okay. And that part of them is still feeling afraid. That part of them hasn't been fully updated with the fact that these feelings are okay and that these feelings are valid. And when at times of vulnerability, times where like life becomes a bit stressful, these parts might come forward. These parts might be like triggers that might come to the fore.
Right. Yeah. And
so with this cornerstone of self-acceptance, someone might reach it and that might be it, and that might be done and okay, that that's full acceptance. And it could also go on for years and years and years, or decades. And both of those, it's an individual, it's a very individual process. So for this client, and again, like many clients I'm working with, they are going through a process of finding their community, And what I have a lot of clients talk about is this, it's almost like a imposter syndrome, like parts of them saying like, am I queer enough?
Sure.
Maybe because I, haven't come out until my 20s, or for some people 30s, 40s, or, I've had relationships, I've had heterosexual relationships, so will I be judged? And our finding community is a cornerstone of this process. I think it's really useful to think of it like that, because in our model, and when we kind of really dig into each cornerstone, finding community is so important. It's so important for all humans, but it's so important for people who've maybe felt othered in their life, or separate from people that they love because of non-conforming feelings. And so finding community is so important, but it's also challenging. It's hard for everyone to kind of find the community that they feel safe in, that they belong in, and can bring up all kinds of challenges of its own. So I'm working with a lot of clients at the moment around what it's like for them within different communities. And the other thing that this client is going through, that again, many of my clients are dealing with at the moment, is the cornerstone of sharing non-conforming feelings. And again, in our model, a really important point that we make is, we know this very much, like coming out or letting people in, it's not a one-time decision. It doesn't just happen once. It happens like forever.
It's a dynamic process, isn't it? Constantly making those decisions whether to tell people or not, and how to tell them.
Yes, whether to tell them, how to tell them. Is it safe to tell them? What might their reaction be? Is that person okay with the range of reactions that they might get? And again, this is like, it's a really, what in IFS terms we would say, it's a self-led process. Like somebody draws on these internal qualities of confidence, of courage, of perspective. Yes, so there's some examples of these. And maybe to talk about healing as well, because the healing is in our model is specifically talking about healing from shame. And we know that when it comes to feeling like feelings around sexual orientation or gender that don't conform to the norm, so someone who maybe isn't cisgender, isn't heterosexual, because there's so many negative messages around, it's very likely that someone is going to absorb these feelings of, at some point in their life, of being different or wrong. And those feelings can really hang about. So we might call that like internalized homophobia or internalized transphobia. And IFS would call it like burdens, that parts hold these burdens of parts of the person still feeling like something is wrong with them, even when they logically know, of course, there's nothing wrong with these feelings.
So how would you work with that? Do you have some thoughts about how you might work with those internalized oppressions or beliefs?
Shall I go, or do you want to?
That's it for you.
So what we do in IFS is there's a process called unburdening. So when clients are able to access their self and then meet their part, for example, mostly it's a vulnerable younger part carrying the belief that they're not good enough, then there is a certain protocol of how to help the part really unburden this belief. And this comes from shamanic traditions, actually, because it tears on, or it helps, it asks for how do you say, like the elements to help and come take on the burden. So and first of all, you go to the situation where the person experienced, or where the part experienced one situation where he took on the shame, for example, where he took on the belief that something is wrong with them. And then you help them get out of this situation and find out if they have any like burdens they're carrying with them from that situation. And then you help them like unload it, so to say, and bring in, and this is something that I find very crucial about IFS. Once the burden is unburdened, you ask, like you make space for the client to bring in their light and their self energy into their body where this burden was stored, so that the person can have more and more of their energy, of their pure energy in their system, which will make them more resilient, obviously, and stronger in situations where they need to stand up for themselves, because they will because it really improves the quality of contact they have with themselves. It's much easier, like self-love can flow much easier.
Right. Okay.
And I think, I mean, the thing I think that drew me to IFS, I was doing so much work around shame, and self-compassion is like really the antidote to shame. And that's what like IFS is that self-compassion is inherent to self-energy, and so meeting, like when we can meet the parts of us that feel shame with that just complete compassion, that's really transformative. And then of course that we can do that for each other and with each other. And you know, we talk a lot about that, you know, every time someone is kind of accepted for their true self, that can heal like a layer of shame. And so that is kind of inherent in this model as well. When someone is able to have true self-expression that really expresses who they are, or they're able to share their really real feelings with someone and have them heard and accepted, or they find a community of people who really just accept them for who they are, all those things are healing burdens of shame.
Right. Yeah, it feels very energized, very energetic. Yeah. Okay, tell me more.
What do you want to hear? What are you interested in?
I think I'd like to hear more about how you might work with it in the room. Do you have an example? So
what I can tell you is how it can be used, like in the day-to-day work, in the practice.
Okay.
I find the model really helpful in as a clinician, as a therapist, in understanding the process of my clients, like, because this model doesn't tell a narrative. It's not telling a story of how people have to go through their identity formation, but it's rather creating a framework where you can have some orientation, but it gives enough space to fluidity and to see that things are constantly changing. And we all have so many parts in us, and it always depends which part comes forward. And there is like ambivalence and polyvalence. All of that makes completely sense when you have to navigate through that process. And for especially these situations, I find the model really helpful in understanding. Also, when working with people with intersectional identities, for example, they want to access community, but it's so hard for them because maybe their gay part is super happy in the gay community, but their Arab part is really frightened and does experience discrimination or microaggressions, or what othering in a space the person finally wanted to feel safe and seen for all the person is. And so I find this model really helpful in considering these more complex aspects of the process, and also making space for anger and grief, like and any kind of feelings, really, also shame. Like, this model really helps in seeing that these feelings they don't need to be exiled, but they need to get space, and we have an antidote. Like we have everything it needs to heal in us, especially when we're connecting with other people. So in IFS therapy, it's also one thing that is crucial is that the therapist holds self-energy. So if the client can't access self-energy yet, the therapist has self-energy. And we know that in this room, this also creates an atmosphere that helps the client access self-energy at some point in the therapeutic process.
Right. And would you share this with the client? Would you give them a copy of this, or is this just something that you hold in your head and would use in thinking about the client and maybe using in supervision?
I think it really depends on the client, because there are some clients that are really interested in understanding and getting like perspectives and orientation, or at least some framework. And I think for them, this could be really helpful. Also, clients that, I mean, this model, and especially self-energy, holds, I have to look for the word. There's this word, like, what's the word? There's a richness in resources in us. And for some clients, I find it really helpful to share with them, to help them access this inner realm and let them know that this is in them. It's not something like, because especially if clients have a lot of shame or feel a lot of shame, they think they're not worthy of all these good feelings. And to really say everyone has it and we can access it, and it's
we all deserve it and we have it there anyway.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
It's just really a question of accessing it and of allowing yourself to feel it. And this can be also very helpful for clients in my experience. But I also think it's important to always add that self is a spectrum, because some clients think, well, if I don't feel compassion and love for myself, like the sun,
I'm a bad person.
I'm not good enough. I can't do this. I can't do the model. And it's really not like that. Like, it's really just, it's a spectrum. Yeah.
And I just wanted to add to that. I mean, just sort of going on from a point Magdalena made about like IFS, at the heart of IFS is this idea of like validation. Like, we're constantly seeing and being with and validating all the different feelings of our different parts. And so, for example, with anger and grief, you know, it's so important that those feelings are validated, because they're real, right? There's real loss of experiences and sometimes of connections of people, and there's reasons to be angry. And even similarly, like parts holding shame, you know, they hold that shame because of the world that they grew up in, which gave them that shame. And so it's really, really important to always be meeting and validating those feelings, helping parts let go of them or heal them. But first of all, really kind of being with them and giving them space and not being like afraid of them as a therapist or as a person with those feelings. And so IFS and this model really, you know, this model is really like, let's not push away, you know, don't push away the parts feeling shame because now we know it's okay. Let's like go to them and be with them so that they can feel okay. I have so many clients who feel shame for feeling shame around their sexuality or their gender. And so this model really, and IFS in general, it's all about not exiling those feelings. And the other thing I was going to say is we're putting together at the moment 2 resources that explain this model, and one aimed at therapists and one aimed at people.
Great. Oh, great. Good. Yeah, because it's very rich, and I think it would really help to have more understanding of it, and maybe even some workshops on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very exciting. Very interesting indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to tell me about it at the moment?
I don't think
Or if
so.
we, do you feel like we've done enough for today on this? Because as I say, it's quite rich, and I think it's going to take a bit of time for
Yeah.
people to kind of really assimilate into it, reflect.
Are there any other questions that you have, Dominic? Any burning questions right now?
Nothing burning. I think it's very elegant. I think it's very exciting. I'm curious to know more. It kind of leaves me thinking, I'd like to see this. I'd like to see a demonstration of it in action in a way. Maybe in a role play or something, or working with someone who, like, just to see the process being worked with and brought out, because it feels incredibly affirming. It's a very affirmative model, and welcoming in all the sorts of shadow parts, that not nothing is allowed to be split off, but understanding why things are split off, and then welcoming them in, even though they might be controversial or unpleasant or difficult, but they all have a place. They're all here to be loved or accepted or celebrated or understood.
Exactly.
Does that, yeah?
Yeah, it's a lovely summary.
Okay. Well, thank you both for spending time sharing this with me. I've really enjoyed learning about it. And I look forward to these resources, and when they come out, do let us know, and we'll push that information out into our network.
Amazing. Thank you.
And are you sharing this within the IFS movement? Because it's quite a big modality, really, and a popular one. So are you making waves there?
Yeah, we're beginning to share it, aren't we? We're we're at the beginning of that process of getting it out there and writing about it, producing videos about it.
Great. Well, thanks for coming to us early. I feel privileged to have an early insight into what I think is going to be a really valuable contribution to IFS theory.
Thank you so much.
Great. Now I'm just going to stop that sharing. Lovely. All right. Well, great to meet you, Victoria, and to see you again, Magdalena. Thanks so much. I'm just going to stop this recording.
Thank you so much.